Welcome to Deer Talk Now. I'm Brad Rooks, filling in for Dan Schmidt, and today we have Brandon from Silencer Central, and I'm excited about this because silencers have taken off for the last couple of years, and I want to find out, one is a little bit about your background, how you got into this, and two, talk about the process because you always hear it's so complicated, but you guys made it easy. So I want to get those two things in, and then literally talk a little bit about the advantages of why to use a silencer. So let's let the people hear a little bit about your background, okay, Brent?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the southeastern part of the United States. Um, Oddly enough, I went to pharmacy school, so I'm a registered pharmacist in North Carolina and Florida, and where I live here in South Dakota. Um, let's see, what else can I tell you? Um, I Some people think it's crazy that I did pharmacy at Chapel Hill and I did my MBA at Duke because the two don't match, but
Compete head to head, right?
yeah, totally. It is what it is.
Okay, so when a basketball game comes on, I got to ask you, who are you cheering for, Duke or NC?
Well, it's according to which year it is. No, I'm just kidding. So lately, both of them have kind of struggled. Chapel Hill more so than Duke, but I always say I spent 6 years at Chapel Hill because of pharmacy school and only 2 years at Duke. So my loyalty is still with the undergrad and
There you
pharmacy
go.
school. So
There you go. I have, just so you know, I have a background. So I don't have a pharmacy background, but I have a daughter that's a pharmacist.
oh,
So
cool.
yeah,
Where
yeah,
is she?
yeah. So she's out of Wisconsin here. She went
Cool.
to one of the private Milwaukee school of whatever, like where they have
Yeah.
their doc. So yeah, so it's pretty cool. But I understand that career. It's kind of interesting that you had a pharmacy background, right? And now you're in the hunting and shooting industry. So how did that
Totally.
happen?
Yeah, no, good question. So, my wife, we met at a pharmacy convention. So she's a pharmacist and she's from South Dakota. So that's how, they said you don't want to meet her. She's from South Dakota. And I learned what that means is you moved to South Dakota. So it's worked out well, no complaints. Um, but, when I first moved to South Dakota, I really got into hunting more so than any other place I'd lived. I came from Florida to South Dakota and I just really got into hunting. And, honestly, I was shooting prairie dogs in the grasslands of South Dakota. And what I realized is when they hear a shot go off, if they've been educated, they typically know to go down in the hole. So I was at a gun show one day and I think it was even a fake silencer on like a tactical setup. It was more of a cool factor. They weren't really for sale. This is in the early 2000s, so a long time ago.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, I ended up buying one from a local gun store, and they warned me it's going to be a horrible process. You're going to wish you hadn't done it. I did everything they could to try to talk me out of it, but once I had one, I loved it. I just didn't love the process, so I ended up getting my own license, and the license is pretty expensive. So I thought, well, I better sell a few to justify the license, and it sort of took off from there. In my background after pharmacy school, I went directly into pharmaceutical sales, and then management, training, and marketing. So I had been in sort of the business side. So it was a good
Nice.
transition.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's talk, since you've hunted with silencers and you already brought one up, right? The report of the firearm that scares a lot of animal. What other kind of advantages do you get from using the silencer?
Yeah, good question. So obviously the natural one people think about is like sound mitigation, which I think is important. I think sometimes that we forget real world, typically we're hunting with someone else, so we want to protect their hearing as well. I think that also people sometimes hunt with their animals, like their dogs, so they want to protect their ears. There's also, if you've been hunting enough, which I feel sure you have, you've probably forgotten to put your earmuffs on, or
Oh
someone
yeah.
else shot and you didn't have yours on. So it's kind of a natural protection for everyone, and I think people forget that. So that's a benefit. Recoil reduction is always one that I forget to mention.
Yep.
Brakes were really hot there for a while, and it was because it reduced recoil. Well, the benefit of the suppressor is you're able to get the same recoil reduction, but you also get the sound mitigation, so you don't have to wear the earplugs. Um, what I've noticed too in real world hunting scenarios, especially larger game, you can hear the impact of your bullet, and you can typically tell if it's a kill shot just because
Really?
typically when you take a shot, the blast is so loud it sort of covers up the impact shot. But
Yep.
I've hunted big game so many times that when you hit, you could tell if it's a solid,
Solid.
if you hit bone or yeah, it's just a good. And of course, I still love the prairie dogs. It sounds like a wet towel popping them when you hit them, so you you know for sure you hit them. So I'd say those are the major benefits. I mean, also it helps accuracy, just having a little bit of weight on the end of the barrel, similar to like a bull barrel. It helps your accuracy. It speeds up your velocity a little bit, so there's no negative impacts there. So overall, it really enhances the hunt.
Yeah, I was amazed at how easily I got a 223 for coyote hunting, black gun, love it, and I was amazed at one how easy it was, but how much quieter that thing became. Before, like if I came out of my house and the coyotes were out in the field, man, you get one shot off, right? And they're like running, and still they're gonna. A lot of times with the silencer, I notice once you shoot, they may spook a little bit, but then they'll turn and stop. They'll run a little ways
Yeah,
and stop, which
yeah,
is kind of
yeah.
amazing. If it would have been the full rifle, man, they're hauling butt, right? I mean, they're
Oh,
going across that field and you'll never see them again. And now you're able to maybe take another one, so it gives you an advantage there as well.
yeah. And really, so I started the business here in South Dakota. And I would say 99% of my customers were coyote hunters. So that was a big selling point. The joke I used to always say, if you call in three coyotes, how many of the three do you want to kill? And the answer is four.
Well, yeah,
So
yeah, all of them, right? Yeah,
yeah, totally. Yeah. You
yeah.
want to kill more than are there. So it really gives you an advantage there. But what I've seen and heard, like people will call me on deer and they'll say, we're culling our farm and I shot a doe and there was two other deer sitting there eating with her and they didn't run. They just kind of looked up and kept eating. And so, if you're in a position where you don't want to scare the other game, if somebody else is hunting with you and they haven't taken their harvest, and it creates a lot of different opportunities.
I want to take a second there, so which makes perfect sense, right? And probably the further that animal is away, right? Even because it's not making the loud, noises a regular rifle would. And
Yeah.
if you shoot them at probably 200 yards rather than 100 yards, it's even going to be quieter to that animal. Correct?
Yep. I mean, sometimes obviously they're going to hear the bullet if it breaks the sound
Hit
barrier, but what I find is because there's not that loud percussion, they can't tell where it came
came
from.
from, sure, so they
Yeah.
don't spook. Sure.
Yeah, and they don't know which way to run. So it's kind of like I think I heard something. More so in deer, it seems like that almost doesn't bother them. But with the coyotes, like used to, if I would shoot at a coyote and missed, and they would hear the bullet drop behind them, they'd run towards you because they thought that's where it came from. So it is interesting how every animal is a little bit different. But for some reason, it doesn't spook the larger game as much when you do use a suppressor, which obviously is a benefit. And you hear that a lot. Hey, I got to admit, I missed on my first shot. I got a second shot, or
Nice.
hey, I missed one, but then a bigger one came over the hill. So I was able to, didn't scare it. I was able to take that one. So there's always a lot of benefits.
Nice. Well, let's talk about the product itself. Your silencer. What makes it a great silencer compared to others that are out in the market?
Yeah, good question. I mean, one thing that I found, again, we started mostly just in the hunting market. And I would say hunters are very specific. They want two things. One thing they want is they want it super light. So they don't want a lot of extra weight on the end of their barrels. So you'll see our suppressors are typically 100% titanium just to keep the lightweight. So you kind of get the lightweight you would get with aluminum, but you get the durability even better than stainless steel. So you'll see the Banish line of products are all titanium. So that's a huge benefit. The other thing we find is people want them super quiet. So typically, if someone's shooting tactical, they just want a hearing safe. But if someone's shooting for hunting, they want it as
Oh,
quiet as possible. The advantage to being quiet is what they're looking for. So we've really focused on the Banish line of focusing on quiet, lightweight. And the other benefit a lot of people ask for is comes apart to clean. Because just for me shooting varmints, I have to admit, earlier this week I was in Wyoming and I shot 1,000 rounds of 22 to 50 ammo. So when I came home, I was like, I got to clean the rifle and the suppressor, and the Banish come apart to clean. So it's nice to be able to get the carbon out of there and put it back together. A lot of hunters find that as a benefit. They feel like if they're using it a fair amount, they want to keep it clean.
yeah, and that's important on any rifle, keeping it clean. And with the suppressor on there, it does get a little bit of more residue, right, that builds
Totally.
up in the gun. So,
Yeah, in the carbon, if it builds up too much, you can almost have less volume inside the suppressor. So then it starts over time negatively impacting the sound mitigation. So there's a huge benefit to be able to take it apart. And I just find, I worked gun shows for all the years and talked to the customers, and most of them, probably like 50% of people go, yeah, I want to be able to take it apart, see what's inside, make sure everything's still working right. The baffles are typically all the same, so you can put them back in any order. So it's just, it's kind of I guess, a guy thing to be able to take it apart. And
I took one apart just to see what it did. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
like how you envision
yeah,
it before, because I thought, well, before it's dirty, right? And I want to
yeah,
see how
smart.
easy it is to take apart when it's clean, because it'll go back together easier that way. And it was
Totally.
super simple. So let's talk about the process. So because you always hear, like your experience, you don't want to go through the process. It's almost impossible to get. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's explain your process to the individuals.
Good question. So, I've been doing this since 2005. And so, really, our entire mission since day one is how do we make the process super easy? Because what I find is people come to us at the booth at shows, trade shows, or when they call here, the biggest obstacle in their mind is the process. So once you help them understand how we've made it easier, then they're very interested. They're like, all right, how do we get started? I would say one way that we make it super easy is we're think of it as we're putting all the burden on us. So we're asking you for stuff, and then we're completing the paperwork for you, and then you're signing it digitally, and then we're actually mailing a suppressor to your front door. So when I first bought one, they basically handed me the paperwork, said, go figure it out. And then when you get it figured out, come back. Whereas now, we're making it super simple by helping you manage the process digitally. A lot of guys just do it from their phone or computer.
Yeah.
But we're capturing all your information. We're sending you the forms. You're reviewing it to make sure it's right. You're signing it digitally. You're done with the forms. Then some of the other things we do to make it simple, we let people pay while they wait. I always say it's hard to convince the wife that the suppressor is a good idea, but and that you may not get it for 7, 8 months. So,
Yeah.
I could just see my wife if I said, "Hey, I just spent $700 or $800 and I'm not going to see it for a year." It's like, okay, you did what, and why would you do that? So we let people pay while they wait, and guys
Nice.
like that because there's no interest or fees. We figure we're in the boat with you. We want it to come back approved quickly, so we let people pay while they wait. Another feature that we provide that's nice is we create a free gun trust for everyone based on the specific state they're in. And the gun trust, the benefit is it allows you to share with other people. So if you have other people you want to use your suppressor when you're not there, we can help you put them on that trust. And then also it allows you to determine who gets it when you pass away. So the trust is a nice benefit.
That's
Um,
huge.
yeah, we also thread barrels. I just found that, there's this obstacle of, okay, how do I get that on my gun? It's not threaded. So we can mail you an empty gun case. You put your rifle in there, it ships to us, we thread it, and then we ship it right back to you. So it's a nice, the goal is how do we make everything super, super simple? And then, Silencer Central is licensed in all 42 states where silencers are legal. And because of that, we can mail the silencer to your front door from our location in your state. So whatever state you live in, we do the paperwork specific to that
The
state
state.
and for our location in that state. And then once it's approved, our employees on the back end do the paperwork. So then we can mail it directly to your front door. So a lot of guys are like, gosh, I mean, it went over really well during COVID just from a, kind of a touchless process where we could do everything remote and then just mail it to your front door.
Wow. You did make it simple. The other thing,
Yeah.
if your gun's already threaded, right? I mean, now it's super simple. It's just
Yeah.
make sure
Screws
it's
right on.
screw it
Totally.
off, screw on the new. If you got a firearm with a muzzle brake on it already, you basically just take that off and replace it. So
Totally.
it makes it an easy process.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
what made you? You already talked about how you started it a little bit. Was it just that harder process that you said I got to come up with a better system, or were you looking to get out of pharmacy, or just
Yeah.
curious how you started the
Yeah.
business?
Yeah,
So
no, no, good question. So, I was in the pharmaceutical industry. I've always kind of kept up my pharmacy license. My dad's a pharmacist, so kind of as a backup if I ever needed it. I would say that the natural driver in the beginning was to pay for my license. So there was really no hidden agenda. It was just, I was paying $1,000 a year for this license. So I thought, I got to sell something to justify
by
and to
doing
pay
it,
for to cover this. But honestly, what I found is the first show I worked here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the first gun show I worked, big gun show, I had basically a piece of felt that I'd gotten at Walmart and it covered part of the table. That's all I could get was part of a table. I had 3 used silencers on there. I had a couple business cards and a couple brochures. And I honestly had one of the largest crowds of any booth in that entire show
no
because there was
way.
so much intrigue, there was so much interest. And what I realized is at that point, I probably knew 30% more than anyone in the room, but no one else knew anything about them.
Sure.
So it was this natural attraction. I mean, to have a crowd of 40 or 50 people at your table, I'm thinking, man, because I know everything about this, because I've gone through the process, I've got my license, I own a few, I know more than anyone in the room. So people are asking me questions and they're wanting to buy them. So I was like, gosh, this seems like a good,
Huge
uh,
opportunity. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It started where I was kind of, I always use the pharmacist analogy, how they stand behind the counter. That's kind of how I was when I first started. They just came up with questions. But then I realized, hey, I need to get out there in front of people and hand them a silencer, let them see how light it is. Ask them, could you benefit from, mitigating the sound and also the recoil and speeding up the velocity, just talking to people. And once you talk to them, pretty much everyone at a gun show, I mean, who doesn't want to make their gun quieter and get, mitigate the recoil? So then it just became an opportunity to build trust with them. I did, just not being from South Dakota, growing up in the South, it probably, and I didn't really grow up in a gun culture, and mostly at gun shows, I would say it's collectors. So in the
Sure.
beginning, it was a little tough, but once I saw the interest there, I thought, man, I can make this work. And it was something fun to do. It was kind of a way to get to know the people in South Dakota. Because when I first started, I worked every show in the state. We still do, but to work 8 or 9 shows across the entire state, you
Oh,
typically see the same people every weekend. It's kind of a social event,
yeah.
and it was a great way for me to meet people after moving here. It was a great way to, kind of sell them on the benefits of suppressor. But really, the great part for me was the guys that were a little skeptical, and then when they came back after they used it, they're like, "Why didn't I do this 10 years ago?" And I'm like, "Man, that's what I've been telling you. That's what I've been telling you." And literally, that's 100% of the time is once someone uses it and hunts with it, they're like, "I'll never hunt again without it." They're just 100% hooked. So it's a good feeling to go from I didn't know they were legal. I'm not really sure I need one. Brandon convinced me I need one. I love it. So to me, that was just kind of very a rewarding type scenario.
So have you seen where a guy buys one for let's say for his 223? Well, now he sees the advantages of coyote hunting. Now I want one for my big game gun, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Now
totally. Yeah,
now I want one for my squirrel gun. I want to go shoot squirrels with
yes,
22 with special ammunition where they only hear the
yes.
bolt go back.
Totally,
So
100%. So if you look at the data, there's about 3.5 million suppressor silencers that have been made in America and transferred. The math shows that maybe like 1.5 million people own all those. So once
really
someone buys one, they end up getting another one. So typically I go back and forth. Sometimes I tell people, my first advice is whatever firearm you shoot the most, get a suppressor for that. It's going to work better than you thought. And it's going to be easier for you to justify getting another one. But I would say our most popular is like the Banish 30, and then they also use it on, say, a 243 and a 223. So you could use it on a 30 cal,
cal.
308, 300 Win Mag, 300 Weatherby, 270. But then you could also drop it down to a 223. So people like that sort of first purchase. They're still a little skeptical, but to be able to cover 95% of every rifle in their vault, they're like, all right, I'm in for that. Let's try that. And it being titanium, it's lightweight, so you're not putting a lot of extra weight on a 223.
Yeah.
Whereas years ago, every silencer was stainless steel, and it was just didn't make sense to take a 30 cal stainless steel and put it on a 223. But now with all titanium, it makes sense.
Well, and business has been growing, right? I think I read that you were one of the fastest 5,000 companies in the last,
Yes.
right? I mean, so it's just
Yes.
tremendous. It's just cool.
Yes. And I always say the numbers are a little misleading because when I first started, I was in South Dakota, and then I went to North Dakota, and then I went to Nebraska. So when I tell people my sales have doubled every year since I've been doing this, they're like, well, that's not possible for 20 years. But the situation is I've just added more and more states till in 2019, we got up to 42 states. And then the challenge is we've always worked events, and it was sort of boots on the ground where would meet people. Now we're doing more outreach, as far as podcasts like we are here, doing print advertising, doing a national like direct to consumer campaign. And really traditionally we focused 100% on the hunter just because that's where our products match up best. And then also that's where where our roots are as far as being able to relate to the customer and be able to, I don't feel like anyone else is really focusing on the hunting market. The one thing I forget to say often is, we're a dealer and we can sell anyone's product. So if someone's watching this and go, hey, I want XYZ because my buddy has that, call us, we get it. So we can sell anything.
Nice, nice. What I like, like from companies like yourself, I always love it when the guy's very passionate and he developed it for himself first, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to put the best product in your own hands, and if it's good enough for you, now you start selling it to the mass guys, and we all love it because it makes our life easy. You
Yeah.
took all the challenge out of it, so it's really really cool. Man, I have one last thing that I wanted to bring up for smaller calibers like 22s. We
Yeah.
don't have it on. I ordered one because I didn't have a threaded barrel, and,
Oh,
and I kind of wanted to get a different 22 anyway because mine
yeah.
are old as the hills. So I
Yeah.
got one coming, and I'm excited about it. But then you use the subsonic ammo, right? And
Yeah.
now, I mean, it's got to be mind-boggling how quiet it is.
Yeah, and don't feel like you have to use subsonic. Obviously, if you do, it is super quiet. Like I've used the 22 bolt action where it was so quiet with subsonics that I had to put oil on the bullet so I could see it hit the target, like see the black mark. Is that
Really
quiet? Yeah, it is crazy quiet. It's what I call crazy quiet. Um, no, it's fun. I mean, it's almost addictive. And growing up in the South, I like shooting squirrels. So it's and this, like I said, last week and through Monday, I was out shooting prairie dogs, and this was a great place in Wyoming. They'd never been shot before, and that's one thing I wished I had brought was a 17 HMR and a 22 our Banish 22 suppressor, and because there were so many of them that you could literally almost grab outside the car
No
window. That if
way.
I, yeah, totally,
Oh my God. And the farmers love you, right? Because
yeah,
what people don't realize is those things are just hole burrowing little, you know what I mean, for your
yeah,
cattle. They'll break legs. They're just nasty. So the farmers want to get rid
yeah.
of them. And it's always nice for hunters to take their part. So where you're in South Dakota, what's your favorite big animal? Because you guys got it, you kind of got it made, especially in the West. You got mule deer, antelope, whitetail. Yeah, as a resident, you got some elk. I mean, you know,
Yes.
us non-residents never could get a tag, and I think yours is once in a lifetime. But what's your favorite big game animal to hunt?
So if I have to look at like all, big game, gosh, so I have to admit I'm spoiled. I've been to Africa.
Okay.
So I've shot some really big stuff. Um, Gosh, I mean, like some of the stuff, like a big stuff like an eland that almost, just enormously. I enjoyed shooting zebra. I mean, a lot of fun with, we sponsored a TV show, and I didn't realize afterwards that, the TV show was going to be hosted in Africa, so I had to go. And I was like, oh, twist my arm, but no, yeah, no, that's definitely my favorite. As far as big game, and Africa spoiled me, but I've done a fair amount of like access deer down in Texas. That's
Yeah.
always fun. Just you can take the kids and let them shoot as well and have a good hunt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going down in next week. We go down to Texas shoot an axis buck. So
Oh, good. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Yeah, I still want to go to Hawaii. Of course, you can't take silencers to Hawaii, but no, there's so many good places to.
what are the states where they're not legal? It's probably easier for you to mention
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, good question. So as I mentioned earlier, they're lawful in 42 states. You can hunt with them in 41. So the only state where they're legal where you can't hunt with them is Connecticut. But then the states where they're illegal, I usually call them the dark blue states, just politically. So you got California, you got Illinois, you got New York, New Jersey, you got Delaware, you got Rhode Island, you got Massachusetts, and then you have Hawaii. So there's 8 states where they're not legal per state law. So they're fine federal law, but state law they're not legal. So hopefully they can make some inroads. When I first started doing this, they were illegal in Minnesota, which borders me, and Iowa, which borders me, and some states like Missouri used to require you had like a CNR, like a curios and relics firearms license to be able to buy them. So
Really?
in most states, when I first started doing this, it wasn't legal to hunt in them. So I always say this is a good example of where gun control hasn't gone negative. Typically, it's gone positive. More states have added it. More states have allowed hunting. So I think it's going to be a positive trend to continue.
And really, as a state, wildlife management uh, association or whatever you want to call it, ours is DNR. Why wouldn't they allow it? Because you're
Totally.
literally it's almost easier for them to harvest animals, right, for the hunter if they're trying to shoot, say, doe population. You're trying to knock down
Yes.
does. Man, there's a huge benefit to using them. So why would they be against it? It just
I think one of the hardest states to get it approved in was Montana at one point. I think game fish and parks felt like they could hear the shot and they knew where you were, and that helped. That gave them some. But then I think it went back to okay, bears also know where you are when you shoot in
yeah,
Montana, so maybe we don't want. And I think there was some back and forth, but you know, people always think silencers are scary, but I always, typically when I interview employees, that's the big question of how stable is this market? Are we all going to get, laid off tomorrow? Or are they going to
yeah,
ban these? And I always say it's not a public safety issue. They're just not used in crimes. If it's used in a crime, it's one that was made by themselves, not one they acquired through the process.
yeah,
So I think that the negative connotations of suppressors sometimes would, hold states back. What I found some states that they made them legal in, it was because of just law enforcement are starting to use them now. And it was making it hard for manufacturers to be able to make them and supply local law enforcement. So some states flipped just from a law enforcement benefit and
oh,
also
nice,
manufacturing activities in those states. So I'm hopeful that more states will continue to, especially a lot of people like to reference, if you look at Europe or even Africa where they're not regulated. I mean, I was in South Africa in April, and you go to the gun store and you could buy a suppressor over the counter. There's no serial number on it. So,
really.
yeah, I mean, they get it. It's not a, public safety issue. They're not used nefariously. Parts of Europe, just because of the population density, it's almost required in a lot of areas to use a suppressor just for the sound mitigation.
Yeah.
So, it's an education thing. I always say it's a benefit. The more people that own these, the better chance we're going to have to influence our politicians.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you think of where you said criminals really aren't using them, you're right because normally criminals are using the cheapest gun possible, right? I mean, they're not
Totally. Yeah.
they're not buying the high end stuff, and and
Oh,
and this would just add one more layer, an
totally.
expense to those guys.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
we when you think about silencers, you got to think back to the old James Bond movies, right? I mean, that's
Totally.
what
Yeah.
everybody envisions
Yeah.
in their head, but it's not really the case. I mean,
True.
we're using them for hunting, and we're using them for a good reason. You know that suppressing the sound, and you brought up a huge deal for your ear protection, especially. So I can tell you, we hunt a lot of box blinds. We're out of Wisconsin, so during firearm
Oh yeah.
season,
Cool.
it's cold, right? And
Yeah.
I can remember one of them, no hearing protection, and my little guy didn't have the gun barrel quite out of the window, right? It was back
Yeah.
in. Oh my God, this is the
Yeah.
total, you know what I mean, with the
Oh
blowback.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
you could hear the windows rattle. It hit so hard inside.
100%. Totally.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to hear and see. We just got the silencers on our guns, so we didn't get a chance to hunt with them last fall. So it'll be interesting to see what our whitetails do. And we do a bunch of doe management, so I'm kind of excited. We're gonna test that theory about distance. We're
Yeah.
gonna give them a good workout. I can tell you that.
No, I love that. And I hope you'll give us feedback because what I found is, we have some influencers we work with that have TV shows that are really big into deer hunting, and to hear them call back and say, "Gosh, we had no idea the benefit." So that tells me like if the people that are hunting the most and are kind of seen as the thought leaders in the industry don't have that much experience, and then they call me back like unprompted and say, "Wow, what a huge difference. We had no idea. We wish we'd done this, years ago." It makes me feel like, hey, there's a huge opportunity here. There's a lot of people still that don't know and haven't seen the benefit. It'll just continue to catch on.
Plus, it's got to feel good as a hunter, right? You're helping other hunters. I mean, that's got
Yeah,
to be one of the best things about the whole thing, the process. You're making it easy,
totally.
So
Yeah,
um,
it's helped my daughter get into it. I've got a daughter who's 14, and I don't know that she would have really been because I agree it's intimidating, right? A loud shot and just kind of the unknown and learning it. And to be able to mitigate just like one thing, the recoil of the sound, and help them get more comfortable with the firearm. And as you know, as kids get more comfortable, then it becomes natural. And it's like, gosh, I want to go hunting every year. It's
yeah,
not I'm scared of this thing. So it helps, I think, get more people into hunting as well.
recoil's huge, and both of those. A lot of them, when you have youth that are getting in, like your daughter, it's kind of funny. We shoot off lead sled, right? So a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of times they're shooting off lead sled. They don't feel it kick, but still, the sound really kind of does scare them a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see exactly with less sound, less recoil, what it will do. I'll give you a tip so what I do with my kids, and this is for everybody out there. So I had them start shooting. I got a little 243, but it was a Thompson Center Encore, which was interchangeable barrels. I set up
Yeah.
a little 223 barrel, exactly the same scope, same everything. So they shot the little 223 all summer long, right? Now it's deer season. I flopped down the 243 barrel, which still doesn't kick a lot, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
put that barrel on, boom, she shoots a big deer. And I was like, hey, did you feel a kick? She goes, no, I never even felt it. Now I can't imagine if I would have had that 243 with a silencer on top of it. Now I
Yeah.
really got something, so it's even less. So
Yeah, no, no, totally. Yeah. So my daughter shot a black buck down in South Texas, in December of last year. Yeah, she's hooked now. Just I think that helps so much.
nice. And for anybody getting youth involved in it, for two things. One is you want to make them, comfortable in that situation. You want to make sure they have fun. Don't take them out when it's extremely cold, right, or any of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
situations. And you want to give them a target-rich environment because
yeah,
it's proven. The research has shown if they're successful in the first, like season that they go out, they're probably going to get hooked for life. If they go out there and not see anything for time after time after time again, they'll probably stick with their phone and just do nothing.
oh,
So
that's good insight. That's good to hear.
they're
I hopefully I've got my youngest on the right track. Now I just need to get my oldest.
nice. Now, how many kids do you have?
Just two girls, one's 15, one's 17. So I got to work on a 17-year-old before she goes off to college. So
Okay, I'll leave you with one last little story. So my daughter, that's a pharmacist, she's 27 now,
oh,
going on
cool.
28. Anyway, so with all the schooling, because you went through it, she kind of gave up hunting. She hunted when
Yeah,
she was gun hunted through high school, then got into college and kind of gave it up. When she became a pharmacist that year, she's like, Dad, I'm going to gun hunt again. I was like, all right, you know what I
good,
mean? Come on.
good,
And now she's hooked. Last year we sat out together. She just shot a great big buck. So yeah,
good.
so there's always a chance. Even if they get
Yeah,
out of it for a while, they're going to come
yeah.
back into the fold. So
No, that's good. Yeah, I could see exams around that, October, November, December time. It is hard to stay in it when you're in college, but no, good. She got back into it. That's perfect.
yeah, absolutely. Brandon, I thank you for the time. If you guys haven't
Absolutely.
checked out Silencer Central, they make the entire process easy of buying a silencer. They'll walk you through it, tell you exactly what you need for your firearm. For us, it was the easiest process possible. I'm excited to see what the guns will do this fall. Like I said, we'll be shooting our first big game animal coming up in Texas here next week, and we'll see what it'll do. I'll let you know, okay?
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So one thing I didn't mention is, we try to do a lot for conservation. So if anyone's listening and they have like a local chapter affiliated with your organization that wants to auction off items for donation, we'll give them a free silencer. And 100% of what it auctions for, we let the local chapter keep. So
Oh, that's
if there's
huge.
anyone out there that hasn't heard about that or wants more information, just call our call center here, and we're happy to support the local chapters within your organization so they have a chance to continue to raise money and contribute to conservation.
That is so cool. You got to love companies that are giving back, and it sounds like you
Yeah.
guys are doing exactly that.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm Brad Rooks. This is Brandon from Silencer Central. Visit us next week for another episode of Deer Talk Now.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by 10 Point Crossbow Technologies. Whether I'm in a tree stand, ground blind, or spot and stalk hunting, I know the Nitro 505 is up to any challenge. Check one out at a dealer near you or log on to 10pointcrossbows.com for more information.